Strong quake strikes. California's wine country still feeling aftershocks from Sunday's earthquake. Hidden fees. What will that hotel stay really cost you? Knight in shining armor. Sir Richard Attenborough leaves a legacy on film. And saying goodbye. A community comes together to honor the memory of Michael Brown. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Monday, August 25th, 2014. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick with your news now. Missouri teenager Michael Brown, whose death sparked weeks of protests, is laid to rest today. Jason Calvi is here covering that story.
Brian Brown died on August 9th, and since then, violent clashes have erupted between protesters and police. But today, peace and prayer prevail as family and friends pay their respects. Soulful cries to God as a father says goodbye, and tears from a mother who lost her son, 18-year-old Michael Brown. Others celebrated Brown's life through dance at this Missionary Baptist Church in St. Louis.
The Lord is my light and my salvation.
Brown's great uncle, Pastor Charles Ewing.
Yes, we call him the gentle giant. We call him Big Mike. We call him Mike.
Brown's family spoke of his growing Christian faith and his dreams.
He wanted to go to college. He wanted to have a family. He wanted to be a good father.
Mourners included people from Ferguson and guests from out of town, including White House aides, filmmaker Spike Lee, and activists like Al Sharpton.
I don't know how long the journey will be, but I know how this story gonna end. The first will be last. The last will be first. The lion and the lamb gonna lay down together.
For now, the Ferguson ministers continue their difficult job, comforting their people and calling for healing. Father Robert Rosie Rosebrow ministers to the Ferguson community and says the town will heal eventually.
People are proud of what we have. And yes, like any family, you've had deep hurts. Sometimes they've been unaddressed. And yet the people have a rich ownership of the town and going on many good things, many blessed things. Those haven't stopped.
But one thing that had stopped was school in Ferguson. Finally, 12 days late, but the students have started their school year today. We still don't know what happened that night when Michael Brown was shot. Police earlier said the officer was assaulted, but now a grand jury and the FBI are looking at the case.
And now some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. California Governor Jerry Brown has declared a state of emergency after the Bay Area felt its strongest earthquake in 25 years. Napa Valley's wine country took a hard hit early Sunday. The damage is hard to miss along the streets of downtown Napa. Sunday's estimated 6.1 magnitude earthquake caused some buildings and storefronts to come crumbling down in the middle of the night.
We've had a couple people who've lost everything, whose homes completely burned down. So nothing left at all but a foundation.
It was scary. It was about the scariest thing I've ever been through.
Shockwaves radiated away from the quake's epicenter 6 miles southwest of California's wine country. The U.S. Geological Survey estimates more than 8 million people felt some degree of shaking, and that economic losses will reach $1 billion. The cleanup is ongoing in Napa, where some wineries lost their holdings.
You can see here where the barrels are broken open. I don't want to go down there. I want to stay out there because some of the barrels are still a little bit on the teetering side.
And others were left unaffected.
A winemaker right across the street from us, they were devastated. Dozens and dozens of their barrels collapsed. At my winery, just for instance, no barrels collapsed.
While British intelligence may be close to identifying American journalist James Foley's killer, U.S. authorities say they'll hold those responsible accountable. Wyatt Goolsby is here with the very latest on this investigation.
Yeah, Brian, both UK and US authorities are carefully looking at the video released last week by Islamic militants. It comes as the family of James Foley has released the text of the journalist's last letter he wrote while in captivity. The family is also taking the time to ask for prayers and support from the community.
That the dead may be with their Savior in paradise, and especially for James Foley, remembered in a special way at this Holy Mass. we pray to the Lord.
Lord, hear our prayer.
On Sunday, friends and family honored James Foley during a Mass of Remembrance in his hometown of Rochester, New Hampshire. Bishop Peter Labashi says Foley was living his faith by bringing images to the world of people suffering from war.
I wish to extend to you, in the name of all people of goodwill, our deepest sympathy.
Foley was kidnapped on Thanksgiving Day 2012 while covering the Syrian uprising. On Sunday, his family released his last letter, written while in captivity. I remember so many great family times that take me away from this prison. Dreams of family and friends take me away, and happiness fills my heart. I know you are thinking of me and praying for me, and I'm so thankful. I feel you all, especially when I pray. I pray for you to stay strong and to believe. I really feel I can touch you, even in this darkness, when I pray. The family thanked God for Foley's life and has urged supporters to make donations to a fund that will further Foley's legacy. In addition, Foley's alma mater, Marquette University, is collecting donations for a memorial scholarship. A funeral for Foley will be October 18th, what would have been his 41st birthday. This weekend, Iraqis in the Kurdish north also held a small memorial for James Foley. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff says right now ISIS doesn't pose a direct threat to the U.S., but if they do, he will recommend U.S. military action in Syria, where the group is very active. Something we'll continue to follow. Brian.
Thank you, Wyatt. Meanwhile, another American freelance journalist has been freed after being held by Islamic militants for nearly 2 years. An al-Qaeda-linked group transferred Peter Theo Curtis to UN peacekeepers at the Golan Heights Sunday. American government personnel then moved Curtis to Tel Aviv. The Qatari government helped negotiate Curtis's release. Today, the White House says no ransom was transferred.
The United States government certainly did not ask the Qataris to pay a ransom. In fact, we asked the Qataris, consistent with our longstanding policy, to not pay a ransom for Mr. Curtis. That all said, we are grateful in knowing that Mr. Curtis is coming home after so much time held in captivity in Syria.
Ransoms have been paid for other captured journalists, usually by European governments, for their citizens. Pope Francis prayed for the victims of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine over the weekend. During Sunday's Angelus address, the Pope said his thoughts go in a special way to the beloved land of Ukraine. Sunday marked the anniversary of Ukraine's independence from the Soviet Union in 1991. Francis asked the faithful to join him in prayer for the victims and their families. The United Nations estimates that more than 2,000 civilians have been killed since April in eastern Ukraine fighting. The Holy Father has donated $1 million to Christians and other religious minorities in Iraq. The Pope's envoy, Cardinal Fernando Filoni, says he delivered part of that donation during his recent visit. The money will go to Catholics and Yazidis, the group trapped on a nearby mountain. Cardinal Filoni says Christians in the region must be defended. Also this weekend, Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI celebrated a special Mass on Sunday for his former theology students. They get together every year. The Mass at the Vatican was private, so we didn't get a glimpse of Benedict. One participant, though, tells EWTN News Nightly he was in good form and he enjoyed a reception after Mass. A former Vatican ambassador accused of sexually abusing young boys in the Dominican Republic has now lost his diplomatic immunity. That means he could be tried by Dominican courts. A Vatican spokesman said late today that Joseph Wesolowski had ended all diplomatic activity for the Holy See and lost his immunity. The Vatican recalled Wesolowski last August after rumors emerged in the Dominican Republic that he had sexually molested young boys. Earlier this summer, a Vatican tribunal found him guilty under canon law, ordering him to return to the lay state. A Vatican criminal trial is pending. Well, after a weekend to digest the Department of Health and Human Services' new rules regarding the contraception mandate, we take a closer look tonight. The new rules allow nonprofits to directly notify the Department of Health and Human Services of their objections to covering contraception. The federal government then contacts insurers and third-party administrators, ordering them to provide the coverage. This nonprofit rule has not been finalized, but it takes effect immediately. USCCB President Archbishop Joseph Kurtz had this initial response. We note with disappointment that the regulations would not broaden the religious employer exemption to encompass all employers with sincerely held religious objections to the mandate. Instead, the regulations would only modify the accommodation under which the mandate still applies and still requires provision of the objectionable coverage. James Capretta from the Ethics and Public Policy Center is with us, along with Laurie Windham, Senior Counsel at the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty. Laurie, you initially called this one more retreat on the part of HHS on this mandate. Let's look at a quote from Michael Warsaw, the EWTN CEO. He mentioned that he was extremely disappointed. He said it appears that the government has simply changed the flow of paperwork and done little else. So, having had the weekend to really look this over, has anything changed?
I think that quote sums it up really well. What the government has said is that instead of notifying your administrator, you'll notify the government and they'll notify the administrator. So this is not a serious change to the accommodation, but it is a change to the way the government is administering it. So we will have to wait and see how organizations respond and what happens with the lawsuits going forward.
Of course, the Becket Fund represents EWTN, the Little Sisters of the Poor, and many other nonprofits. James, do you see any gains in this, and what are the main concerns moving forward?
I don't see any gains, really. I think it's really the same thing. You know, an employer objects, but they can't get out from under offering the objectionable items and services in their health plans. If they offer a plan at all, it will always cover these things. It doesn't matter how circuitous the route is to get there, they still require all of this to be covered. So an employer like EWTN simply can't offer a health plan in conformance with its collective conscience. They have to offer this one that's, adheres to this new government mandate. So I think it's changed nothing morally.
So these changes are coming off this big victory of Hobby Lobby. I know that you represented Hobby Lobby. Is this a result of that case, what they're trying to do here?
I think part of it is a result of that case. For the first time, the government has acknowledged that American families do not lose their religious freedom when they open a family business. For the first time, they're proposing to extend an accommodation to family businesses. Whether that accommodation will actually stand the test, we'll have to see. Also, I think this is a reaction to the Supreme Court orders in the cases of Wheaton College and the Little Sisters of the Poor, where it said that those organizations were free from the mandate and that it burdened their religious freedom. So I think that the administration once again is backtracking and trying to undo the many, many legal losses that it has in court.
James, what do you think of the dangers of HHS deciding who is exempt and who isn't?
Well, absolutely. That's a huge problem. You have a bureaucracy that is administering this program. They don't really share the values of the institutions that are pursuing these exemptions, and so they draw very arbitrary lines. There's no really any good reason why an institution like EWTN shouldn't be able to exercise its religious liberty rights, as opposed to elements of the Catholic Church. And so I do think that handing all of this to a bureaucracy is quite dangerous, very arbitrary, and there isn't a lot of recourse through the bureaucratic system, and that's why everybody's ended up in court.
So, Laurie, I'm assuming these cases are going to move forward. What has been the record on cases challenging the mandate so far, and how do you see that moving forward?
Well, so far the government has lost 90% of the cases.
I thought it was pretty high.
Yes, they are not doing very well, and obviously religious organizations are going to have to study this rule carefully and decide how they want to proceed with their cases. If those cases are going to continue to move forward, the government is going to have a really heavy burden to bear to try and turn this tide against them.
Laurie Windham with the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty and James Capretta from Ethics and Public Policy Center. Thank you both. You've really helped a lot.
Thank you.
Coming up, a pricey picture. One man's photo shoot lands him in handcuffs. And why hotels are tacking on fees for the most basic services. On Monday, August 25th, this is EWTN News Nightly. I'm Brian Patrick. Ebola continues to devastate West Africa. There have now been more than 1,400 deaths across the region. The latest victim was a Liberian doctor. He was among 3 Africans to receive an experimental drug. It's the same drug given to 2 Americans who recovered from the deadly disease. A Spanish missionary priest infected with Ebola also received the treatment, but he did not survive either. No updates so far on 2 other Liberians who took the last known available doses of that drug. A Russian man is facing a New York judge today after climbing the Brooklyn Bridge to capture the perfect photo. He is being charged with reckless endangerment, criminal trespassing, and creating a security breach. According to court paperwork, the 24-year-old supposedly told police he scaled the bridge for fun, but police didn't quite see it that way. They say the tourist climbed over a security barrier Sunday to scale one of the bridge's massive cables. A police helicopter and patrol boat were called in for backup. When he came down, he was handcuffed and arrested. Bridge security has been an issue lately. Last month, 2 of the bridge's U.S. flags were replaced with white flags by a pair of German artists. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio is ordering a full-scale review of security on city bridges. Stocks traded higher today with investors encouraged by the latest round of corporate deals. The S&P 500 moved above 2,000 for the first time, then retreated slightly. It closed near 1998. The Dow rose nearly 75 points, closing just above 17,076. Fewer Americans bought new homes in July. That's evidence the housing sector is still struggling more than 5 years into the economic recovery. The Commerce Department says new home sales fell 2.4% last month. The largest drop was in the Northeast, a whopping 30.8%. Smaller drop-offs were reported in the Midwest and the West. Only the South saw a rise of 8.1%. Sales lost momentum last October, derailed by modest wage growth and a bump in mortgage rates. Well, the internet allows travelers to shop and compare airfares and hotel rates, but what we often miss are those small fees, and they really add up, as Catherine Zeltner reports.
Airlines have made it the norm, charging extra fees for basic services. Now it's hotel guests who are feeling the pinch.
2014 will be a new record for hotel fees and surcharges, about $2.25 billion. This is a trend that's still relatively recent.
While a daily resort charge may be nothing new, a new study by NYU professor Bjorn Hansen says hotels are tacking on a growing number of fees.
Typically 80 to 90% profitable.
Even if guests don't use the service, making it harder than ever for travelers to anticipate the true cost of their stay. Nowhere is this more apparent than Sin City, where a weekday night at the famed Bellagio can be found for $170. But that's not including the $25 resort fee or its $3 tax. Want to skip the long check-in lines? That's another $30. Check in early or check out late, add $30 more. And if you want to make sure you get that king instead of 2 queen beds, you guessed it, another $30.
Hotels have had, now 20 years really of experimentation to find out which fees and surcharges are most tolerated by guests.
Something recent visitors to New York have noticed.
There's no breakfast, there's no internet, everything's an add-on.
The American Hotel and Lodging Association says fees are common and disclosed at the time of booking. But Hansen says there are steps you can take to avoid getting a nasty surprise upon checkout.
Ask the reservation representative if there are any automatic fees or surcharges. If the person says no, get that representative's name or number.
With charges varying widely from hotel to hotel, it may be hard to get a handle on when or where you will get hit with the extra fees. Catherine Zeltner, EWTN News Nightly.
Up next, classic character actor, accomplished director, and husband for life, Sir Richard Attenborough has died. And soccer greats are gearing up for a game in Rome inspired by Pope Francis. It is Monday, August 25th. This is EWTN News Nightly. I'm Brian Patrick. Thank you for joining us. Well, teenagers need more sleep, so experts say they should start their school day later since you can't get them to go to bed earlier. The American Academy of Pediatrics says middle and high school classes should begin no earlier than 8:30 a.m. These pediatricians believe starting later would reduce chronic sleep loss and improve overall health. The docs say parents also should remove distractions like TVs, computers, smartphones, and video games from the bedroom. Teens should get at least 8.5 hours of sleep on school nights. Some even need more than that. He began his showbiz career as a classically trained English actor, but he also found great success as an actor's director. The BBC cited his son in reporting Sir Richard Attenborough's death on Sunday. Our Catherine Elliott looks back at his extraordinary life and career.
There it is. Welcome to Jurassic Park.
Moviegoers may best remember Richard Attenborough as the founder of Jurassic Park.
You said you've got a T-Rex?
Uh-huh. Say again. We have a T-Rex.
Or as Santa Claus in the 1994 remake of Miracle on 34th Street.
Usually the store Santa Claus whiskers are too loose.
Right.
Yours look realistic.
That's because they are real. You give them a tug. Woo! Are you convinced?
But Sir Dicky began his career some 5 decades earlier in London, with a scholarship to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. He put his studies on hold to serve in World War II, and after the war appeared in several war-themed movies, like The Great Escape with Steve McQueen.
Hold on to yourself, Bartlett. You're 20 feet short. The hole is right here in the open. The guard is between us and the light.
Attenborough played a number of character roles, among them the circus ringmaster in Dr. Dolittle.
Splendid. How do you do? My name's Doolittle.
Yes, I'm not interested.
I thought you might like to see a rather unusual...
No, I wouldn't.
But he soon found himself drawn to the other side of the camera.
It's what I love. I'm not a great movie director. I'm not an auteur. I'm a storyteller. I'm a craftsman. And I love, beyond anything else, working with the actors and finding the ways of making an actor believe that what they're about to do is the best performance that they've ever given.
Attenborough was knighted in 1976, but his true crowning achievement was producing and directing the epic biopic Gandhi, a film that took him 20 years to make.
I was bankrupt several times. I had to mortgage my house. My family suffered to a certain extent. I placed things at risk because I cared about it so much.
If we obtain our freedom by murder and bloodshed, I want no part of it.
In the end, it paid off. Gandhi won 8 Academy Awards in 1983. Attenborough found success in his family life as well. His marriage to actress Sheila Sims spanned 7 decades and produced 3 children, while younger brother David became the renowned nature broadcaster, a family that shared Attenborough's passion for the craft.
Art as such means a great deal to me. And my philosophy has always been that I believe that art is not an elitist gift for a few selected people. Art is for everyone.
Catherine Elliott, EWTN News Nightly.
So very talented. He will be missed, but we have his wonderful work. And Pope Francis is backing a soccer match that will gather greats from around the globe next week. Former Argentina great Javier Zanetti says the idea arose during a recent audience he had with Pope Francis. The September 1st event at Rome's Olympic Stadium will promote peace and raise money for at-risk kids. Argentina coach Gerardo Martino and Arsenal manager Arsene Wenger will put together teams featuring Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Hindu, and Buddhist players. So far, some very big names in soccer have signed up for that big event. We talk about a party animal. It was a good weekend for one cub here in Washington. The National Zoo celebrated panda cub Bao Bao's first birthday. She is only the 2nd panda at the zoo to even survive her first birthday. Bao Bao celebrated in a good panda way, a cake made from frozen fruit juice and other treats, delicious items like pears and apples. This past year, Bao Bao has grown to be a 44-pound black and white bundle. Zookeepers say her favorite activity is sleeping in a tree. Now that's my kind of activity. Give me a pillow, give me a tree, I'm happy. Well, we thank you for joining us tonight, and each night we look forward to being with you each night this week. Until tomorrow, we encourage you to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. You can watch again anytime on EWTN's YouTube page. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, I'm Brian Patrick. Thanks for watching tonight. Good night, and God bless you.